Hey, it's Brian and Chris here, and it's the end of the week. And on a Friday, I figured we'd talk about our long week that we've had with clients. And the title of this one we're going to call is Working Through Storms. Working through the storm. How do you continue to work through the storm? For a lot of clients, most clients, they don't have all the stuff they need to continue to work through a storm. So, a couple of things we'll talk about is maybe you should invest in a generator, battery backups, of course, whether you have storms or not, they're always a must have. And Chris can shed some light on some of this stuff for us. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. So let's do this here. So I'm gonna go on Amazon and I'll just bring up a few just to go over maybe some of the differences on them because there's various brands. They all kind of do the same thing, but there are a few products that have some more specialized features for reliability purposes. So if we come in here and just type, I don't know, battery backup.
While Chris is pulling that up. So it's been a long week for us because here it is in the spring, and we had one last blast of winter, and we got some heavy snow here in New Hampshire with some rain, and basically it was taking down trees because of all the wet snow, and took down some power lines, and clients were calling us trying to figure out how to get stuff back online, how to work through the storm, and all those sorts of things. And, we remind clients that this isn't the first time we've had this. We remind them over and over. There are some few things that you can buy to either work through the storm or prevent things like we were just on a call earlier about a couple machines got hit. They either weren't on the battery backup, like we set them up, or a surge protector, or something just happened and they got a spike of power and they lost those computers. So now they're scrambling with laptops, right? And they don't have enough laptops. That's another thing to keep in mind is having enough laptops on hand. So anyway, Chris, I'll let you take it away with the battery backup side of things.
Yeah, so I got two units here. We got this. You see one that looks like a tower, you get a fancy display. This is one of the more higher end units, 1000 V or 1500 VA, 1000 watt unit. This is for running maybe CAD workstations. Maybe you got two CAD workstations that are using 400 or so watt. And then we also have this more budget friendly. These are still solid units. And these ones, they just look like a surge protector. Now there's on both of these units, you can see there's one side that's just surge protected outlet. And then maybe you'd put your, I don't know, your monitors on there, some kind of hub you got connected on your computer on there. But then the other side is battery plus surge. And that's what you're going to want to have the computer itself on. These smaller units are only like an output up to, I don't know, 260 watts, and you're paying about $50. You only get about 8 ports, but only 4 are on the battery side. But this is plenty for your standard Dell Optiplex, Lenovo ThinkStation, whatever you have. You know what I mean? For general workstation use, these units they're cheap enough and they do the job. But then there are some, like for example, you can see I purchased this one. This is a more higher end unit. But you got to understand what you're plugging into it too, like the wattage. For example, I had my firewall plugged into the battery backup. I had the modem from my fiber provider, the ONT, a Synology NAS that's not using that much wattage, but my computer can use up to 1000 watts when I went to a higher end graphics card. So then it beeps at you like you overloaded the battery backup. With all these units, I don't know, Brian, what would you say? You do got to replace the batteries off them on them every 2 to 3 years, maybe 2 to 5 years in that range.
Yeah. So our general rule of thumb is on those anything between like the first one you were showing, not that one, Chris. This
Yep.
one you can likely replace the battery on the higher end one, but this smaller one for 50 or $60, you're not going to replace the battery on. We don't replace the battery on. We
Yeah.
just swap it out with a brand new one and it already comes with the battery. Like Chris said, this is fine for just a run-of-the-mill office desktop. Like you don't have a high-end power supply or anything like that. One of the things you want to keep in mind, though, is like Chris said, the surge side of that is for things like printers and monitors. You don't want to plug printers and monitors into the battery backup side. The battery backup side is for network devices and your computers only. It's not for these like this is I've seen this in the past. Someone has a little space heater under their desk and they plug it into the battery backup side of the battery. So basically it uses too much juice. You're gonna burn out the battery and or blow up the little battery backup. It's just not, you don't do that. That just goes into a regular surge protector separate from your battery backup. You don't plug those into the space heaters.
Right.
Like that. Same
Monitors
with
and all
printers.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, anything that uses a lot of power, you don't want to plug in. A PC doesn't use a lot of power. A monitor does, a printer even more, right? So,
Well, the thing with some of these higher end units, they'll tell you the runtime. If you're using it under full capacity, right, you'll get 5 to 10 minutes. Now, there's another component. So, like this higher end model, there's actually a USB cable that comes with it, and you plug it into your computer. You can plug it into a Synology NAS. That way, it'll send out a signal to the device to cleanly shut down. Now, that's crucial on something like a server. This might not work for a server. Maybe you have a really high end performance server. You might need one that's rack mountable that you can put in a network rack, 12 to 1500 watts, say. And that's those server systems, or even a Synology in some cases, that's critical. If those don't cleanly shut down, there all sorts of things can go wrong, whether it's the hard drive start, something happens to those, the operating system corrupts. There's just a lot of variables at play. So it's important that you have the certain devices, they cleanly shut down. You don't want to be scrambling when the power goes out and you don't have that and you're like trying to rush to shut everything down. Even if you're doing it from the command line, like I do with my servers, it still takes, it's going to shut down all these servers that are running within the server. It's not, these aren't designed to keep you up for days, hours on end. This is like just so you can cleanly shut down the device.
that's a good step. Chris, that's a good stopping point where we just had that conversation with one of our clients where they have a manufacturing operation and they have power surges and lots of power problems with the local electric utility. One of the things that I've been proposing to them for some time is a standby generator, like a propane standby generator, because, and we had another client I proposed that to the other day that was a smaller client, just because they had things in the refrigerator that needed, the refrigerator needed to stay on. I said, well, you can hook that in and your computer systems and your network devices. So when you lose the power from the grid, it switches on automatically. And then you're not going to have this up and down. Because what Chris was just pointing out is that's what happened to this client we just spoke to. They had power up and down, and next thing you know, even if it was on a battery backup, sometimes the computer's fried. So this up and down with the power on and off, like in winter storms like we just had, you don't want that for these devices, whether it's a switch, a firewall, any of your networking equipment, any of your computer or servers, especially. You're talking big money when you start having to buy a new server, right? So, I mean, always look into your insurance, see if your insurance will pick up the tab on that. But you really don't want to keep tapping into insurance because of storms and things like that. You want to make sure you're a little more proactive, right? A lot of this stuff is not big money. Chris just showed you an example of a higher end one for $200. Server one might go anywhere from 500 to 1500, 2000, depends on the size of the server. Yeah, Chris is showing that right now. But your desktops, I mean, anywhere from $50 to $75 per desktop. It's a nice insurance policy. Go ahead.
So they got a nice little graph here. So back to that more expensive unit, that's a different technology, these sine wave ones. So other than a higher price tag, there's some reasons why people recommend these that are considered interactive UPSs. They said there's a LinkedIn article here. You got UPS technology comparison chart. They got some nice graphs here. I'll have Brian, we can throw this in the details in the YouTube video or wherever we upload it.
Sure.
And it shows like the effectiveness on some of them. And the main reason why people recommend these sine wave ones, the pure sine wave models, are enhanced compatibility with various ranges of sensitive devices that that can't be, you don't want to run into situations where they're not cleanly shut down. Reduce risk of damage to the electronics, like from malfunctions, overheating, damage when powered by the sine wave UPS, stuff like that. Oh, I accidentally went to a new tab.
So you're not gonna get this pure sine wave in obviously the, $50 to $75 range, but you could see
Yeah.
that in that $200 range and up, you start to see that technology.
Consistent charging on the batteries, extended device lifespan. I mean, I think I've had mine. When did it say I last purchased it? I'm still using this model, December 2021. The battery health is still fine. It's still going strong in 2024. And I kind of pushed it to its limits. But
And if you start to spend around $200, Chris, I mean, a lot
I
of
got-
times you can either get a knockoff battery or
Yeah.
you can get a branded one from the manufacturer. It makes sense to replace those higher end ones. The lower end ones, not so much.
And then there's also, when we mentioned the wattage, so there's various ways you can go about this. There's not one of these that I think are better. I do know the sine wave products, they do have some kind of app you can use for free temporarily, but it is like a paid app. I never really found any use for it. But UPS selector guide, you'll find thousands of these all scoured all over Google. But entry level, they'll say up to 450 watts, ideal for single devices such as laptops, routers, basic workstation. And then you got 750 watts. This is for like a living room entertainment space, home office workspaces with multiple peripherals, because it matters what you're plugging in, because that determines the overall system load. And then you get the performance one up to 1200 watts for power hungry, performance computers. This is your high-end gaming computers, your high-end workstations, your high-end CAD machines, and all the stuff like that.
Yeah. Excellent. All right, we'll try to include some of those links in, but that's a lot of information. Hopefully it helps you out, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, have a good one.